So in the last class, when we covered chapter 3, we ended with this shloka, which is shloka 43. Thus, knowing oneself to be transcendental to the material senses, mind and intelligence, O mighty armed Arjuna, one should steady the mind by deliberate spiritual intelligence, Krishna consciousness, and thus by spiritual strength conquer this insatiable enemy known as lust. So that sets the stage for chapter 4, which is going to be about spiritual intelligence, which is going to be about transcendental knowledge. So the title to chapter 4 is Jnana Karma Sannyasa Yoga. Prabhupada translates this title as transcendental knowledge, which is knowledge of the divine. So in chapter 3, if we recall, we said one of our fundamental problems is that our obsession with self leads to self-destruction. So self-obsession leads to self-destruction. Now you may think, not all of us are obsessed. But that's not really what that means. It simply means when you only solely focus on the material platform, it leads to self-destruction, how you are put in various situations where you're not clear on what decisions to make. Second thing is you are forced to take birth again and again and again because you have not elevated your consciousness from the material platform to the spiritual platform. So the question now is, how does one go about elevating one's consciousness from the material consciousness to the spiritual consciousness? The challenge for us today is all around, whenever we look, whoever we interact with, or whatever media that we are interacting with, there is always some temptation. If you use this face cream, you will look beautiful. If you go and take vacation there, you will be happy. If you buy this kind of car, you will be very blissful. If you buy this kind of house, you will be happy. If you wear these kind of clothes, you will be happy. So everybody is selling us happiness. We're constantly being bombarded and told, if you do this, you'll be happy. If you do that, you will be happy. Don't you know this is the only thing that is missing in your life? The once you get it, you will be happy. But that is not true happiness. That is on the material platform. So of course it is going to be temporary. So Prabhupada would use this analogy that, let us say I like rasgullas. Because I like rasgullas, initially, I can take 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 6 because I like it so much. But after the 6th rasgulla, the same thing that was so tasty and so delicious and so attractive becomes repulsive because my body is not able to handle that kind of overload of sweet anymore. So you become satiated very quickly when you chase material desires. And that causes us to become unhappy, like as if there is something missing in our life. There is a vacuum in our life if we're not constantly happy. So this chapter about the transcendental knowledge is knowledge that is going to help us perform our karma yoga in such a way that we can perform our duties and responsibilities very nicely and yet be detached. The entire theme of this particular chapter is centered on performing your duties and responsibilities using the knowledge that is there on the divine platform and becoming detached from material desires. Now, we need to understand the word jnana means knowledge. But this chapter is not about jnana yoga. Although the title may seem to indicate it is jnana yoga, it is not. It is using jnana to perform karma sannyasa yoga. Using knowledge of the divine to perform your duties and responsibilities perfectly. So that not only are you getting that sense of fulfillment, but simply by doing your duties and responsibilities, even the society is satisfied. So you need jnana to perform karma yoga. You need jnana to perform jnana yoga. You need jnana to perform dhyana yoga. You need jnana to perform bhakti yoga. For all four of the yogas, you need knowledge. So jnana is an important facet of any yoga that you perform. But this kind of transcendental knowledge helps you expand your perspective of reality, helps you elevate your consciousness from the material to the spiritual realm. So in the 3rd chapter, Krishna has said, our biggest enemy is lust. Let's just use the word desire. That's the first D, that is our internal enemy. We all have 2 enemies. One is desire, material desire. The second one is doubt. So there are 2 Ds we are struggling with. In chapter 3, Krishna has addressed how do we overcome that first enemy that's called desire, material desire. In this chapter, Krishna is going to address the second internal enemy that we have, which is doubt. So desire is based or arises from the mind. Although Krishna says in chapter 3 that the sitting place of lust is our senses, mind, and intelligence, all 3. Because it begins with the senses and pervades quickly, overwhelms the mind and intelligence. But actually, if you look at it, the mind is where all of your memories are stored. So your material desires are constantly triggered from the mind, whereas your doubts stem from your intelligence. So in this chapter, Krishna addresses how you can increase your faith by simply dovetailing all of your activities, by acquiring and gaining knowledge of the divine. What is this transcendental knowledge? It's not just about understanding who you are and what your roles and responsibilities are, but who are you connected with eternally. When you understand the interplay between Jivatma, Paramatma, and the relationship between Jivatma and Paramatma, one can use this transcendental knowledge to perform any of our duties, keeping in mind the jurisdiction of the Shastras. Okay. So with that, today, all we are going to do is to read the translation of the in English of all of the shlokas. Next week, we will go deeper into Shloka 1 and see how we progress from there. So let's begin our reading. Transcendental Knowledge, Chapter 4. Text 1. The personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna said, I instructed this imperishable science of yoga to the sun god Vivaswan, and Vivaswan instructed it to Manu, the father of mankind, and Manu in turn instructed it to Ikshvaku. So remember, this is a continuation from the last shloka in chapter 3, shloka 43, where the Lord has talked about how we need to acquire spiritual intelligence. So now Krishna is saying, where did the spiritual intelligence come from? Krishna is saying, I instructed the spiritual intelligence. Who did Lord instructed to first? Vivaswan. Vivaswan in turn instructs it to Manu, who is the father of mankind. And Manu in turn instructs it to the king, Ikshvaku. This supreme science was thus received through the chain of disciplic succession. And the saintly kings understood it that way. But in course of time, the succession was broken, and therefore the science as it is appears to be lost. So Krishna is saying, this knowledge originated from me. I gave it to Vivaswan first, the sun god. From there it has come down in the parampara system. Over a period of time, this knowledge is subdued or lost, and therefore now Krishna will talk about how he re-establishes that knowledge. That very ancient science of the relationship with the Supreme is told by me to you because you are my devotee as well as my friend and can therefore understand the transcendental mystery of this science. Krishna is establishing for Arjuna. What is this knowledge? Our relationship with the Supreme Lord. And what is Krishna saying? I am telling you this knowledge again because it appears that it is lost. But I am only telling you this knowledge. I am revealing this knowledge to you because you are my devotee as well as my Saka friend. Only devotees and those who consider themselves to have Krishna as their close friend can actually understand this divine, mystical, transcendental knowledge of the science of the relationship between the Jivatma and Bhagavan. Arjuna said, the sun god Vivaswan is senior by birth to you. How am I to understand that in the beginning you instructed this science to him? Arjuna is confused. He's thinking, wait a minute, I thought you and I are peers. Are we not the same age, roughly speaking? How can you tell me that you instructed this to Vivaswan, who is far older than you? How am I to understand in the beginning you gave this instruction? So then the Lord responds, the personality of Godhead said, many, many births, both you and I have passed. I can remember all of them, but you cannot, O subduer of the enemy. So Krishna is also letting Arjuna know that both he and Arjuna have appeared many times. And Krishna is saying, I can remember all of my appearances and I can remember all of yours. All of the Jivatmas, Krishna remembers. How many times they have taken birth, in what species they have taken birth, what karma they have accumulated as human beings, when they should be taking birth again. All those calculations Krishna is doing. Krishna is saying we Jivatmas forget our previous births. But the Lord has not forgotten us. And the Lord has not forgotten how many times he appears personally. Now, as if to indicate to Arjuna, although the Lord has said, I have appeared, you have appeared many, many times, you don't remember, I remember. Krishna is now stating, although I am unborn, Krishna exists eternally. Therefore, he is considered unborn. There is no source to Krishna. He is the original source. Although I am unborn and my transcendental body never deteriorates, and although I am the Lord of all living entities, I still appear in every millennium in my original transcendental form. For the first time, Krishna is emphatically establishing in the Bhagavad Gita who he is. For the first time, directly the Lord is saying, I am the Supreme Lord. I am unborn. My Satchidananda body never deteriorates. And he appears in every millennium. Every millennium means once in the day of Lord Brahma, which is approximately 4.3 billion earth years. The Lord comes into this particular material universe that you and I are residing in. In the Bhagavatam, Canto 10, there is an interesting pastime of the Lord with Brahmaji. One day, this four-headed Brahma comes to visit Lord Krishna in Dwaraka. So when Lord Brahma approaches the doors to the palace, the doorkeepers ask him who he is. And he says, I am Lord Brahma. So the doorkeepers say, wait here. We will see if the Lord is ready to receive you. So the doorkeepers to go to Lord Krishna. And Lord Krishna tells them, oh, Lord Brahma has come. Just go ask him which Brahma he is. So Krishna likes to play these games with his devotees, just to test them. So the doorkeepers come back to this four-headed Brahma and they ask him, the Lord wants to know which Brahma are you? And Lord Brahma gets bewildered. What do you mean which Brahma I am? I am the only Brahma of this universe. What do you mean which Brahma you are? So Lord Brahma says, please go back and tell the Lord, it is me, Brahma. Who else is there? There's no other Brahma that I know of. So anyway, Lord Brahma is ushered in. And when he offers his obeisances to Lord Krishna, he's a little puzzled. He asks the Lord, but why did you ask that question? You know who I am, right? At that time, Lord Krishna, through his Yogamaya potency, shows this four-headed Brahma. There are billions of other Brahmas in all the other universes. And in front of this four-headed Brahma, all the other Brahmas suddenly manifest. One with 100 heads, 1,000 heads, 100,000 heads, 1 lakh heads, 1 crore heads. So Krishna wanted to very politely point out to Lord Brahma, he's not the only Lord Brahma. So our Shastras say that there are more than 100 billion universes, and each of those universes there is a Lord Brahma, there is a Lord Shiva, and there is a Lord Vishnu occupying every single material universe. So he was telling Lord Brahma, you are not the only Brahma, so don't become a little too proud that, I am Brahma. Who else is there? Although I am unborn and my transcendental body never deteriorates, and although I am the Lord of all living entities, I still appear in every millennium in my original transcendental form, which means in our universe, the Lord appears once in the day of our Brahma. So similarly, the Lord keeps appearing in all of the other universes and performing his pastimes there as well. It's not that we are so special that the Lord only comes into our universe. He keeps traveling. Now he is going to tell us when does he appear and why does he appear. Whenever and wherever there is a decline in religious practice, O descendant of Bharata, and a predominant rise of irreligion, at that time I descend myself. This statement itself suggests clearly that everything is cyclical. There are going to be stages in the universe, in every cosmos, where there is predominant practice of religion happening. And there are going to be times when this deteriorates. And it's during that time, the Lord says, he comes. And what is he saying? I descend myself. Now, why does he come? To deliver the pious and to annihilate the miscreants. as well as to re-establish the principles of religion. I myself appear millennium after millennium. Again, the cycle is continuous. So what is the Lord saying? First of all, he comes for his devotees. His devotees are his top priority. He could care less about the miscreants that are creating all of these problems in society. He comes fundamentally to protect his devotees. Therefore, he prioritizes. He says, I come to deliver the pious. Then the secondary activity for the Lord is to annihilate the miscreants. Actually, the Lord doesn't have to come to annihilate the miscreants. He could use his external potency, Maya Devi, to wipe out anybody that he wants to. He doesn't have to trouble himself to come here. But why does the Lord take so much trouble to come here? To protect his devotees. Because the devotees are always anxious to have a relationship with the Lord, to take darshan of the Lord. So for that reason, the Lord comes. And in that process, he is annihilating the miscreants, and he is also re-establishing the principles of religion. One who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna. So what is the Lord saying? The Lord is saying, anybody means in the human body, who knows that I am the Supreme Lord, that when I come, all of my pastimes are transcendental, my nature is transcendental, I will perform my Leela. Such individuals who know that I am the Supreme Lord and understand the nature of my activities, have faith in me, they never take birth again. They attain my eternal abode, O Arjuna. What happens when you worship the Lord and take his shelter and have faith in him? Being freed from attachment, fear, and anger, these are our self-destructive tendencies that the Lord has talked about in chapter 3. So you have to use your knowledge to destroy things like undue attachment, unnecessary fear, anger. These are all self-destructive tendencies. Being freed from attachment, fear, and anger. How? Being fully absorbed in me and taking refuge in me. Many persons in the past became purified by knowledge of me, and thus they attained transcendental love for me. So Krishna is saying, how do you begin this entire process? First of all, you have to take his shelter. What's the next thing you do? You have to gain more and more knowledge about the divine. And what is the result of you listening to Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam and chanting the names of the Lord? Slowly, your love for the Lord is reawakened, reignited. And when your love for the Lord becomes perfect, Krishna says, you'll come back to me. So this is the potency of this transcendental knowledge, how it purifies you. As all surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. Everyone follows my path in all respects, O son of Pritha. So Krishna is saying, to the extent that you surrender to me, to that extent I will reciprocate with you. But if you reject me, then I am nowhere going to be in your life. Some of us complain when there are difficulties, how come Lord is so unjust? Where is he? Well, did you invite him into your life? Did you take his shelter? Krishna is saying, if you don't want to re-establish a relationship with me, you're very clearly telling me you don't want me in your life, then why would I interfere? If you want to become the servant of Maya Devi, so be it. I will make it possible for you to become subject to the whims of Maya Devi. So the more you surrender to the Lord, the more you are under the Lord's protection. Men in this world desire success in fruitive activities, and therefore they worship the demigods. Quickly, of course, men get results from fruitive work in this world. So Krishna is saying, well, if you really don't want me in your life, and you're just chasing all of these material desires, yes, you can worship the demigods. And yes, if you worship the demigods, you'll get the results very quickly, guaranteed. You want wealth? Worship the appropriate demigod. You want knowledge? Worship the demigod who holds that portfolio. You will get very quick results, no problem. But you don't want me. According to the 3 modes of material nature and the work associated with them, the 4 divisions of human society are created by me. So Krishna is saying he has established the 4 varnas: Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra. If you can recollect from the last class, we said both the Brahmanas and Kshatriyas play a very important role in society. The Brahmanas make it feasible for us to work on inner transformation, because the Brahmanas should understand the Shastras and help the rest of society transform themselves internally. What is the role of the Kshatriyas? The Kshatriyas are engaged in ensuring there is external transformation, which is in the physical realm, in the material world, by simply providing good governance. What are the Kshatriyas doing? They are creating an environment that is conducive for human beings to practice Krishna consciousness. If the kings and rulers are creating chaos in society instead of creating a peaceful atmosphere, why would the human beings be interested in spirituality? They are constantly trying to struggle to just make a living. So Lord Krishna is saying, Brahmanas are important. I have created them for a particular reason, which is the intellectual class. Kshatriyas also play a very important role. I have created them for a particular reason. They have to provide good governance. The 2 of them work hand in hand for the benefit of the rest of the society so that they can take up to Krishna consciousness. And although I am the creator of the system, the 4 varnas, you should know that I am yet the non-doer, being unchangeable. So the beautiful thing about Krishna is that he creates this magnificent material cosmos, and yet he's fully renounced. He's not thinking, hey, that's mine. What are you doing with my property? How dare you abuse my property? That's not Krishna. He's created this beautiful world for us to give us an opportunity to come back to him, but he's not at all attached to this material cosmos. So Krishna is saying, I am the non-doer, being unchangeable. So in our personal life, if we create something or if we acquire something, we are so possessive of it. Oh, that's mine. We don't want anybody to steal it. We are so afraid of losing things. Krishna has created this magnificent cosmos, and yet he's so detached. He's not saying, this is mine, why are you abusing my property? He's given his property for us to use as we wish. There is no work that affects me, nor do I aspire for the fruits of action. One who understands this truth about me also does not become entangled in the fruitive reactions of work. Krishna is saying, yes, I may appear. I may look like just another human being with 2 hands. Nothing that I do when I come affects me. Why? Because the Lord is beyond the 3 gunas. Not only does nothing that I do affect me, nor do I hanker for anything. When Krishna kills Kamsa, all of the other citizens were encouraging him to rule over Mathura, to become the king. But what does Krishna do? He fights, he succeeds, he wins, and he says, no, it rightfully belongs to Ugrasena. So, there is a difference between being a boss and being a leader. A leader does not wait for a particular role or a title to exemplify their leadership qualities. A leader naturally comes to the forefront, whether they have that particular title or not, and whether they get credit or not, they still do their duties and responsibilities. That is a true leader. There are other so-called people who call themselves leaders, but they are not. They are more attached to the title and the role. And they will only perform as per their title and role if they have something in it for them. This is the selfish nature of human beings. So Krishna says, there is no work that affects me, nor do I aspire for the fruits of action. One who understands this truth about me also does not become entangled in the fruitive reactions of work. All the liberated souls in ancient times acted with this understanding of my transcendental nature. Therefore, you should perform your duty following in their footsteps. Krishna is saying, you don't even have to buy what I am saying. But surely, we all have a good sense of history. Who were the previous acharyas? Who were the liberated souls? You don't have to listen to me. Or the liberated souls have already spoken about my transcendental nature. You don't have to believe me because I am telling you this. Just follow in the footsteps of the Mahajans. Follow their footsteps. Remember in chapter 3, Krishna has already talked about Janaka Maharaj. And he's also talked about great leaders who have led the right way. And then he talked about himself as well. Even the intelligent are bewildered in determining what is action and what is inaction. Now I shall explain to you what action is, knowing which you shall be liberated from all misfortune. So in this particular section, which is from Shloka 16 to 24, the Lord actually talks about the intricacies of karma. So in the very next shloka, Krishna says, the intricacies of action are very hard to understand. Therefore, one should know properly what action is, what forbidden action is, and what inaction is. What is action? Karma. What is forbidden action? Vikarma. And what is inaction? Akarma. So generally, when we speak about karma, there are two meanings to the word karma. And when we use the word karma, sometimes we are only talking about one aspect of it and not both. But in reality, karma includes two things. Vikarma includes two things. Akarma includes two things. What are those two things? Krishna has already said in chapter 3 that we don't have a choice. We all have to work. We are forced to work, he says. We don't have a choice. The first element of the word, just the generic meaning of the word karma is we have to perform our duties on the bodily platform. The question is, do we choose to perform prescribed duties or do we choose to do whatever we want, whatever fancies us? Do we want to operate within the jurisdiction of dharmic principles or do we want to step outside that boundary? Or do we want to not even acknowledge that there is any boundary at all? I can do whatever I want. So the first element of karma is action, activity. What is the second element of karma? Results. So technically, at least in our culture, when we use the word karma, we are talking about results. So all three, karma, vikarma, and akarma, include both activity and outcome. What is forbidden action? Vikarma means you're operating outside the jurisdiction of scriptures. So what is akarma then? Akarma means you're operating within the boundaries and jurisdiction of the scriptures. But everything that you do, you're doing to please Lord Krishna. Or at a minimum, you're doing it to avoid karmic reactions, like the Nishkama Karma Yogi. That is a karma. And now there is a little riddle. One who sees inaction and action, and action and inaction, is intelligent among men. And he is in the transcendental position, although engaged in all sorts of activities. So let's unravel this riddle. What is this inaction and action and action and inaction? And Krishna is saying a person who understands the difference between the two is actually very, very intelligent. Not only is he intelligent, he is situated on the spiritual platform, on the transcendental platform, although he himself is very busy with all kinds of activities. Remember, in chapter 3, Krishna has already said, even though a self-realized soul doesn't have any more duties to perform, still they perform duties so that they don't mislead society. They understand that if they are in a position of authority or leadership, that if they choose to just give up, although they technically do not have any duties and responsibilities because they are already situated in divine consciousness, yet they keep themselves busy. So perfect example is His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. At an advanced age, he kept himself so busy. His sole focus was, how can I engage more and more souls in the activities of Krishna consciousness so that they also have an opportunity to go back to the spiritual world in this life? That is the compassion and mercy of a great Acharya. He is not doing this to accumulate wealth, to accumulate followers, to have, a name and fame. As a matter of fact, if you look at it today, almost everybody knows the Hare Krishna movement. Almost everybody knows ISKCON, but nobody knows much about who is Srila Prabhupada. That's the greatness of the Acharya, that he built such a huge movement. And yet the world knows the movement by its name, but not many people know who really Prabhupada is. He remained in the background. What came to the forefront is Krishna, the Harinam. So you see how expertly Srila Prabhupada followed this instruction of Krishna. Always being situated on the transcendental platform. If Prabhupada wanted, he could have gone off and focused on doing his bhajan. He need not have come, taken so much trouble, so many difficulties. When Prabhupada was born, his father consulted an astrologer to create his birth chart. At that time, the astrologer told Srila Prabhupada's father that your son, when he grows up, will establish 108 temples around the world. You can imagine how astounded his father must have been to hear this from the astrologer. And at an advanced age of 70 years, between the ages of 70 to 82, Srila Prabhupada did establish 108 temples across the globe. So this is inaction and action, which means whatever Srila Prabhupada was doing was a karma, but he was very busy, very busy. Srila Prabhupada would only sleep for 2 to 3 hours a night. Can you imagine? I was actually just listening to another devotee's lecture, and this devotee happens to be a writer himself. And he was saying, generally, when a writer begins to write their book, they tend to be in their own library, cut off from the rest of the world, because they need to be fully focused on their writing activity. Because that's when your juices, your creative juices are flowing. When you're allowed to be by yourself so that you can concentrate on the subject matter that you're about to write on. He was saying, how did Srila Prabhupada write 80 books without a traveling library, being in different cities every day, meeting so many people every day, having so many management responsibilities on his head, still Prabhupada wrote 80 books. So this writer, devotee was saying, what an Acharya Srila Prabhupada is. He was an empowered Acharya. That's why he was able to do it. That's why he's so special. That's why we know he's a Nitya Siddha. He's a self-realized soul. No ordinary person can do that. So what is inaction and action? You're active, you're doing a lot of duties and responsibilities, but you're doing it to please Krishna, and therefore the result is an action. The result is a karma. Action and inaction, this is Arjuna. Arjuna saying, no, I don't want to be a Kshatriya. I don't want to fight. I want to become a Brahmana. Because it's inconvenient for me to be a Kshatriya right now. This is action in inaction, which is Arjuna's desire to avoid his duty. And Krishna has emphatically said, you may think you're avoiding your duty, but do you think you're avoiding karma because of it? Karma has an outcome. If you avoid your duty, Krishna says that is sinful, which means you are accumulating papa just by the mere decision that you've made that you don't want to be engaged in this kind of activity anymore. This is action in inaction. You don't want to act, but you don't realize there are karmic influences even for not acting. So one is akarma, the other is vikarma. One is understood to be in full knowledge, whose every endeavor is devoid of desire for sense gratification. He is said by sages to be a worker for whom the reactions of work have been burned up by the fire of perfect knowledge. We know that fire is purificatory. Similarly, transcendental knowledge about the divine is also purificatory. So just by being in this class, whether you're listening attentively or not, you are on the path of perfection. So your ignorance, your illusion is being burned up, is being illuminated rather. Your impurities are being burned up just by attending this class. Abandoning all attachment to the results of his activities, ever satisfied and independent, he performs no fruitive action, although engaged in all kinds of undertakings. So for this particular shloka, you can remember Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada, after establishing 108 temples across the globe, setting up the Bhakti Vedanta Book Trust, his own printing setup, because the very first Bhagavad Gita that Prabhupada published was done under Macmillan Publishers. But when you are under the influence of a publisher, they will do what they need to do to market that particular product. And what happened is, when Prabhupada wrote the Bhagavad Gita and it was published by Macmillan, Macmillan decided to cut down his Bhagavad Gita. They said, no, so many pages is too much. And Prabhupada realized, if I continue to work with these traditional publishers, I will not be able to get my message across, because they will interfere from a marketing standpoint. They will make decisions from a money standpoint. Therefore, Prabhupada instructed his very young disciples. He called a couple of them. He said, set up a printing press tomorrow. And they were like, what? We don't know anything about printing. Prabhupada says, Krishna will help you. This is exactly what happened. A couple of the devotees, I think it was Rameshwar Prabhupada's disciple, He gave him this instruction. He said, tomorrow you start a printing press. Can you imagine? If you get an instruction like this from your spiritual master, tomorrow you start a printing press. Where will you go? Where will you get the funds? How will you set it up? The power of the spiritual master, faith, your doubt, the other D, has to be eliminated. You must have faith in the spiritual master's instruction. Otherwise, how will you succeed? If Prabhupada has said, you get started, Krishna will help you, then you simply have to blindly follow Prabhupada's instruction. And that's what his two disciples did. They set up the Bhakti Vedanta Book Trust. And by the way, that's a separate institute from ISKCON. It's a separate legal entity. Prabhupada was just brilliant. Such a man of understanding, acts with mind and intelligence perfectly controlled, gives up all sense of proprietorship over his possession, and acts only for the bare necessities of life. Thus working, he is not affected by sinful reactions. When Prabhupada traveled all over the world, it didn't matter to him how luxurious his settings were. Although his disciples would go out of their way to make sure that Prabhupada was treated as a king for them. They were ready to offer all kinds of luxuries. But when Prabhupada would visit Mayapur in its initial days, it was just a hut. He would lay on the bare floor. That's when you understand that this is a great Acharya. They are not attached to material things. They are not attached to comforts. They are also detached from discomforts. He who is satisfied with gain which comes of its own accord, who is free from duality and does not envy, who is steady in both success and failure, is never entangled, although performing actions. So this is the detachment part that Krishna has been talking about. Use this knowledge to perform your duties and responsibilities perfectly, but do not be unduly self-obsessed with results. So when we perform any action, we think if I do this, I should get that result. But in reality, it doesn't even make sense for us to think that if I study hard, I will get the marks. Yes, your parents will always tell you that as a student, you must study, you must put in your effort. Then you will get good marks. But will you always get good marks even though you've studied really hard? No. So what else is influencing the outcome then? So Chaitanya Charan Prabhu explains this beautifully. He says actually there are three things involved in order for us to achieve an outcome. One is karma, which is our duty and responsibility. And he uses the analogy of a farmer to explain this beautifully. He says, if a farmer wants to grow something, he has to make sure that he does his duty. He has to prepare the land. He needs to know which kind of soil will yield what kind of growth. He has to plant the seeds. After he plants the seed, it is a waiting game. What is he dependent on? He's dependent on rains. Rains are not under his control. So we all have to put in our duty and effort. That is just one element of the equation. Can this farmer say, hey, I worked so hard. How come I'm not getting the results? There are two other factors involved. What Chaitanya Charan Prabhu calls Deva or Prakriti, material nature. Another way to understand Prakriti is our collective past karma and our individual past karma that decides whether we are going to be successful or not. What is the third element? Time. So these three elements, we have to perform our duties and responsibilities. We have to depend on the larger cosmos to act and enable us. And we have to depend on time. So this plus this plus this, our actions plus Daiva plus time determines the outcome. If we understand this, we will not get perturbed if we don't get the outcome that we have desired. That's why Krishna repeatedly says, just perform your duty. Rest is not in your hands. You have to perform your duty if you want an outcome, but the outcome is not guaranteed for you, because there are other elements involved. So similarly, Chaitanya Charan Prabhu says, if you look at different seeds grow at different rates. Some seeds grow very quickly and produce nice vegetables very quickly. You can harvest them and utilize them. But some seeds, especially when you're talking about exotic flowers, that flower maybe once in 13 years. Can you imagine the amount of patience you have to do that? So not every single act of ours is going to yield immediate results. We have to be patient. And it may not even yield results in this life. It may yield it in the next life. We don't know. So hence Krishna is saying, don't become entangled thinking about the success or failure. Yes, but the Bhagavad Gita talks about goals. All of us must be goal-oriented, whether it's in the material world or it's in the spiritual world. But once we have acted to enable or execute that particular goal, we should not worry about the result. If the result comes, great. If the result doesn't come, you reevaluate and figure out what next. The work of a man who is unattached to the modes of material nature and who is fully situated in transcendental knowledge merges entirely into transcendence. All Krishna is saying is, if you're situated on the spiritual platform, you're deeply connected with me. There's nothing for you to worry about. A person who is fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness is sure to attain the spiritual kingdom because of his full contribution to spiritual activities, in which the consummation is absolute and that which is offered is of the same spiritual nature. Here, of course, Krishna is talking about pure devotees. They are completely absorbed in Krishna consciousness, like Srila Prabhupada. Their entire world revolves around, how can I serve Krishna? How can I engage the other Jivatmas in the service of Krishna? So they are consumed by this one thing alone. How can I connect more Jivatmas to Krishna so that they have the opportunity to stop this cycle of birth and death? Now, Krishna is going to talk about various ways you can acquire knowledge through various sacrificial processes. So from 25 to 33, it's about sacrifices, performing austerities and tapasya to gain the knowledge. Some yogis perfectly worship the demigods by offering different sacrifices to them, and some offer sacrifices in the fire of the supreme Brahman. Some, the unadulterated brahmacharis, which means the Naishtika brahmacharis, sacrifice the hearing process and the senses in the fire of mental control, and others, the regulated householders, sacrifice the objects of the senses in the fire of the senses. Others who are interested in achieving self-realization through control of the mind and senses offer the functions of all the senses and of the life breath as oblations into the fire of the controlled mind. So Krishna is talking about Dhyana Yoga, Krishna is talking about Dhyana Yoga, Krishna is talking about Karma Yoga, Krishna is also talking about Bhakti Yoga through these sacrifices. Having accepted strict vows, some become enlightened by sacrificing their possessions, and others by performing severe austerities, by practicing the yoga of eightfold mysticism, or by studying the Vedas to advance in transcendental knowledge. So here he's talking about the Nishkama Karma Yogi, he's talking about the Dhyana Yogi, he's talking about the Jnana Yogi. Still others who are inclined to the process of breath restraint, to remain in trance, practice by offering the movement of the outgoing breath into the incoming, and the incoming breath into the outgoing, and thus at last remain in trance, samadhi, stopping all breathing. Others, curtailing the eating process, offer the outgoing breath into itself as a sacrifice. All these performers who know the meaning of sacrifice become cleansed of sinful reactions, and having tasted the nectar of the results of sacrifices, they advance toward the supreme eternal atmosphere. What is Krishna saying? If you're practicing Dhyana Yoga, If you're practicing Jnana Yoga, if you're practicing Nishkama Karma Yoga, slowly you will advance over a period of other births as well before you go to the spiritual world. Essentially what Krishna is saying, the entrance door to Vaikuntha and to Golok Vrindavan, one can only enter if one practices Bhakti Yoga. So all the other yogas, although they are wonderful, it can help you with self-realization. It is not a ticket to entry to Vaikuntha. The doors to Vaikuntha and the eternal abode of Krishna opens up when you're practicing Bhakti Yoga. Otherwise, the doors are shut. You may still achieve self-realization and be happy wherever you are. You may go merge with the Brahman. The Brahman is not, it's just outside of Vaikuntha. At best, you would have reduced your anxieties. O best of the Kuru dynasty, without sacrifice, one can never live happily on this planet or in this life. What then of the next? So Krishna is saying, all of us are forced to sacrifice. We have to sacrifice short-term gain for long-term gain. We have to go through some amount of discomfort if we want something valuable in life. Even if it is on the material realm, one has to learn how to sacrifice. So Krishna is saying, if in this life you are, if you're just self-observant, you know you have to sacrifice. Can you imagine what you have to do in your next life until you achieve perfection? All these different types of sacrifice are approved by the Vedas, and all of them are born of different types of work. Knowing them as such, you will become liberated. So the gunas also tend to influence you in terms of which yoga you choose, which yogic path you choose to follow. O chastiser of the enemy, the sacrifice performed in knowledge is better than the mere sacrifice of material possessions. So Krishna has now talked about different kinds of sacrifices. Essentially, he's covered the 4 yoga paths. Now, Krishna is telling Arjuna which path is superior. So, when Krishna is saying the sacrifice performed in knowledge is better than the mere sacrifice of material possessions, he is stating that a Jnana yogi is better than a Nishkama Karma yogi. There is a hierarchy in the yoga ladder. After all, O son of Pritha, all sacrifices of work culminate in transcendental knowledge. Just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. Inquire from him submissively and render service unto him. The self-realized souls can impart knowledge unto you because they have seen the truth. A very important instruction which we talked about prior to the class. The importance of the Guru. What is Krishna saying? If any one of us, whether it is you, whether it is me, if we want to know more about this transcendental knowledge, what do we need to do? We must accept a Guru. And then Krishna is giving other instructions. Okay, after you accepted a Guru, what should you do? Out of the position of humility and submissiveness, we should try to clarify the doubts that we have. Then what is Krishna asking us to do? If you've taken a Guru, you should render service to him. The Guru will always give instructions. Prabhupada always said each one of us should do outreach programs and bring more and more souls into the Krishna conscious path. So 3 things. If we want to know the truth, we must have a Guru. After you accept a Guru, 2 things we need to do. We need to ask questions. But to ask questions, you first have to be willing to listen. Listen to your Guru's lectures. And then, when you have a Guru, most important thing, activity, you have to serve him. Why? Krishna is saying the self-realized souls can impart knowledge unto you because they have seen the truth. So you and I cannot independently pick up the Bhagavad Gita or the Bhagavatam or any scripture and think I can do it on my own. That is not Krishna's advice for us. You must accept a spiritual master if you are interested in pursuing this path of divine knowledge. Having obtained real knowledge from a self-realized soul, you will never fall again into such illusion. For by this knowledge you will see that all living beings are but part of the Supreme, or in other words, that they are mine. Krishna is saying that these self-realized souls are part of me. They are my representatives. So when you approach them, your illusion will dissipate. And you will see that everybody is a part and parcel of Krishna. So your compassion will increase, your mercy towards all jivatmas, let alone human beings, will increase. Your tendency or your desire to do the right thing all the time, every time, will be very sharp. So this is the impact that Guru can have on you. So every day when we attend these classes, we begin our prayer with Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. We are falling at the lotus feet of the Guru and saying, my dear spiritual master, please remove this illusion, this darkness from my mind and from my intelligence. So every day we are praying to Guru. So we should accept Guru also, right? Even if you are considered to be the most sinful of all sinners, when you are situated in the boat of transcendental knowledge, you will be able to cross over the ocean of miseries. Krishna is saying, don't worry. Don't have this doubt in your mind. Oh no, I am just so imperfect. I am so sinful. I don't know if I can really do this. I don't know if Krishna will rescue me. I don't know if Guru will accept me. This is all bogus argument. Krishna is saying, even if you think you are the greatest of sinners, but if you have faith, approach Guru to get this transcendental knowledge, you will be able to cross over to the other side into the spiritual realm. As a blazing fire turns firewood to ashes, O Arjuna, so does the fire of knowledge burn to ashes all reactions to material activities. In this world, there is nothing so sublime and pure as transcendental knowledge. Such knowledge is the mature fruit of all mysticism. So Krishna is saying, ultimately, whatever yoga you practice has to culminate in knowledge of the divine and service of the divine and service of the divine's representatives. The Guru is the external manifestation of Krishna. We need to understand that. That's why we are also singing the Guru Ashtakam before class, to understand what is the position of Guru. He is an external manifestation of Lord Krishna's potency. And one who has become accomplished in the practice of devotional service enjoys this knowledge within himself in due course of time. Krishna is saying, actually, those who practice Bhakti Yoga, they just love hearing about Lord Krishna and his pastime, and that itself gives them bliss. Just the process alone gives them bliss. They're not even worried. They didn't hanker for bliss. Just being engaged in the service of Krishna and his devotees itself gives them bliss. A faithful man who is dedicated to transcendental knowledge and who subdues his senses is eligible to achieve such knowledge. And having achieved it, he quickly attains the supreme spiritual peace. But ignorant and faithless persons who doubt the revealed scriptures do not attain God consciousness. they fall down. For the doubting soul, there is happiness neither in this world nor in the next. So we said the 2 Ds Krishna has covered. Our innate, innumerable, inexhaustible desires for material success was covered in chapter 3. This chapter 4 is about our innate doubt on the Supreme. Is God there? Will He really help me? So Krishna is saying, people without faith in the divine are ignorant. They will fall down. What does it mean? Fall down meaning not physically fall down. Fall down means they'll have to keep taking birth again and again because they are living in ignorance. And then he's saying, for the doubting soul, there is happiness neither in this world nor in the next. And then coming back to the Bhakti Yoga. One who acts in devotional service, renouncing the fruits of his actions and whose doubts have been destroyed by transcendental knowledge, is situated factually in the self. Thus, he is not bound by the reactions of work, O conqueror of riches. So for those who are practicing Bhakti Yoga, your karma tank, we use this analogy of the tank. The tank has an inlet pipe and an outlet pipe. Water has to pour into the tank and water has to come out of the tank. When we take birth, the outlet pipe is the prarabdha karma. So in this water tank analogy, we decide the rate at which we are depositing karma into the tank. But we don't decide the rate at which we experience that karmic influences. So the inlet pipe is controlled by us, by our activities. The outlet pipe is controlled by Krishna. So you don't have a say what you're going to be in your next life, how much wealth you're going to have, whether you're going to be educated, whether you're going to be healthy. All of that is not decided by you. So Krishna is saying, those who practice Bhakti Yoga, those who accept me as the Supreme Lord, they have already shut off the inlet pipe, which means they are not depositing anything more into that tank. And the mystical thing about Bhakti Yoga is, Krishna says, if you take my shelter, I shut off the outlet pipe and I evaporate what is in that tank, provided we surrender to Him, provided we accept Him as the Supreme Lord. We have to do our part by practicing Bhakti Yoga. Then Krishna will do His part by wiping out your karmic reactions. Even your destiny in this life can be altered by Lord Krishna. Therefore, if you ever go to an astrologer and tell them you're practicing Bhakti Yoga, they will tell you, I don't want to see your astrological chart. A genuine astrologer will tell you this. If you're practicing Bhakti Yoga, don't consult an astrologer. If you tell him you're practicing Bhakti Yoga, he will tell you, whatever I read may or may not happen. Because you've already taken the shelter of Krishna. Krishna is directly involved in your life. So if you were meant to experience great harm, Krishna has already taken care of it. Just by surrendering to Krishna, your prarabdha karma is altered. Of course, it's at the mercy of the Lord. He's the final decision maker. This is that Shloka 41. One who acts in devotional service, renouncing the fruits of his actions, and whose doubts have been destroyed by transcendental knowledge, is situated factually in the self. Thus, he is not bound by the reactions of work, O conqueror of riches. Therefore, the doubts which have arisen in your heart out of ignorance should be slashed by the weapon of knowledge. Krishna is saying, Arjuna, whatever you've said so far is arising out of your ignorance. But use this knowledge to cut down your illusion. So Krishna is talking about this knowledge as a weapon. And another military analogy, armed with yoga. O Bharata, stand and fight. So Krishna is saying, you use this transcendental knowledge to do the right thing. Perform your karma yoga. So essentially, we're all here in this world, we have to act, we are forced to act. The only question is, how should we act? In what way should we act? How can we act in such a way that brings us fulfillment, joy, and bliss? Not only for ourselves, but also for society in general. So the important thing for us to remember, our action alone does not determine the outcome. There are other factors like time and prakriti that determine the outcome. At best, we can act, but we can act keeping in mind our position as eternal servants of Lord Krishna, and our only constitutional duty is to please Lord Krishna as much as we can. How can we please Lord Krishna as much as we can? By taking a guru and serving the guru for the rest of your life. Because we don't know Krishna, but Guru knows Krishna. Guru has to hold your hand and introduce you to Krishna. How will you go and introduce yourself to Krishna? What qualifications you have? Let's say you want to go see Modi ji. Don't you need some connections? Somebody who knows Modi, maybe in your family, can introduce you to Modi. But what are the chances of you getting a meeting with Modi if nobody knows you? Or you've not done anything spectacular to be recognized by Modi? Similarly, if on the material realm we can't get a meeting with Modi, you think you're going to get a meeting with Krishna without help of Guru? Not possible. Who will introduce you to Krishna? You will introduce yourself to Krishna? How? We are filled with so many impurities. How on earth will we attract Krishna's attention? But Krishna's attention perks up. It's like, oh, he's taken on a guru and he's serving him so nicely. You come into his radar right away. Not because you're doing anything great, because you are serving his pure devotee. Krishna notices you. We are hankering to be recognized and noticed. Even on the material realm. Let's just focus on being recognized by Krishna by doing the right thing. And as Krishna has instructed us in this particular chapter, let's all take on a guru whenever we are ready, hopefully in this life, so that we may progress nicely on this path of Bhakti Yoga and become reconnected to Krishna and become reintroduced to Krishna. Vancha kalpada